The cameras were already hunting him when he stepped to the podium. A dark suit stitched like armor, a tie the exact memory of midnight. Ezra Cole had trained himself to win in rooms like this, earnings calls, antitrust hearings, hostile bids. But the paper in his palm made a frail rasp, and every microphone seemed to lean forward. He swallowed. The envelope had a crayon sun on it, crooked and yellow. "Can you read this letter?" he asked. "It's very important." Silence swallowed the city. He unfolded the page with the care of a man handling a passport to another life. The handwriting wandered like a shy river. His chest tightened. A tremor moved through his jaw. Everywhere, red lights blinked. Networks live, feeds rolling, investors refreshing dashboard. Ezra's voice usually carried steel. Now it reached for cotton. "Dear Mr. Cole," he read, tasting the word. "My name is Naomi. Anit, can you help my mom?" Reporters shifted in their seat, sensing blood or mercy, not sure which would sell more. He almost closed the letter right there. Naomi. The name struck a bell from a place he had bricked over Sunday mornings in a church basement. Wax on the floor. The smell of oranges his mother handed out to children who whispered prayers like wishes. He blinked hard. His mother had said, "Don't harden so much you can't feel your own pulse." The board would tell him to pivot, announce the acquisition, but the room felt like a chapel, and he was the last one still pretending not to kneel. "My mom is sick," he read, the letters uneven, brave. "She works at your building in the nights when it's quiet and smells like lemon. They said she's just a contractor, not part of the company, so insurance won't help us. She said not to bother you. But I saw your face on TV, and you look like you listen to secret. Can you read this letter? It's very important." The words were simple. The blade was hidden. Ezra swallowed again, and 1,000 lenses tightened like fists. He lifted his gaze and found the city staring back in chrome and glass. His reflection ghosted there among satellites and Crayon. At the edge of the stage, his head of communications, Lila, motioned sharply. "Move on." The teleprompter still carried bullet point synergies, expansion, prudent optimism. Ezra could feel the script tugging like a leash, but the letter pulsed in his hand, warm from his skin. He heard his mother again. "The world will ask for your armor. Save a piece of you for the rain." He read on. "I like drawing, and sometimes my mom lets me sit in the lobby after school until she finishes. Your building hums like a big fridge. The guards are nice, but they don't smile with their eyes. My mom says it's because smiling is heavy when your feet hurt. She coughs now at night. The doctor said medicine costs more than our car. We don't have a car," the letter confessed. "We have a picture of a car on the refrigerator with magnets shaped like stars." The room shifted. People who had never met a bill they could not pay fell. For a flicker, the wobble of a kitchen table leg on payday. Ezra saw, absurdly, his first sketchbook, a green notebook his mother bought with coins counted twice. He had drawn suns with too many rays, buildings that scraped the paper, a boy with a gold crown he could not afford. He remembered telling her, "I'll buy you a house without leak." She had laughed, "Promise me you'll buy a heart that doesn't leak first." His throat burned. Lila's eyes begged him now. Enough. He folded the letter halfway, then stopped, like a swimmer who realizes the shore behind him has vanished. "Naomi," he said softly, though she could not hear him. "I'm listening." The rows of journalists smelled faintly of flash powder and coffee. Someone coughed. Outside, the trains kept their schedule as if time hadn't been interrupted. He felt his tears climb, stubborn and radiant, and he did not push them back. For once, he let the armor unclasp. "She says you're very busy," the letter continued, "and you don't know me. But my teacher says letters are like bridges when there is a river you can't jump. I drew you a bridge on the back. If you walk over it, maybe you will find us." Ezra flipped the page. A child's bridge bloomed in crayon-thick beams of blue and red, arcing over a river the color of storm glass. He traced the air above it, as if his finger might be the first footstep. Someone shouted a question about quarterly guidance. It sounded like a door slamming down a hallway he no longer lived in. Ezra looked up. Guidance, he repeated. Here's mine. His voice steadied, not with confidence but with confession. If a company can calculate everything except the cost of a mother's breath, the math is wrong. A murmur rolled. Vila pressed her palm to her forehead. Ezra felt suddenly bare, like a man stepping out of a storm shelter to find the town still shaking. He went on reading, voice thinned to a thread. We live near the river in a building that sounds like it's breathing when the wind is big. My mom says it's old. I don't like the nights because I think the building will gulp and forget to let us out. When she laughs, the walls sound softer. She keeps a photo on the fridge of a boy with a chip smile. She says he is someone she once loved. I think he is you. The room forgot to blink. Ezra's heart stumbled, a record skipping on an old scratch. There was a photo like that 17. Chip's smile kept by only one person. The letter trembled. He saw the Crayon bridge, the dark river. Naomi, he whispered. Stay with me, I'm crossing. Alone. Ezra Cole had always believed in controlling the stage. A man who rose from a rusted apartment floor to a glass empire learned early that weakness was a commodity you couldn't afford to spend. But the letter in his hand was no stock, no asset, no negotiation. It was a child's play, raw and unfiltered, tearing seams he thought were welded shut. He folded the page carefully, slid it back into the envelope with the crayon sun, and placed it on the podium like it was something sacred. Reporters were restless, whispering questions into microphones, feeding headlines to the world. Billionaire breaks down live. What's in the letter? Cole's empire cracked. He didn't, and his eyes still clung to the handwriting etched in his mind. Naomi's voice, scrawled in uneven strokes, wouldn't let him go. He left the stage without announcing the acquisition, without unveiling the future his board demanded. The cameras caught only his back, shoulders trembling under a jacket worth more than the homes of half the city. In the elevator, the silence pressed against him. Mirrors on every wall showed a face he barely recognized, eyes rimmed red, jaw unshaven with exhaustion he never admitted. Vila stormed in behind him, breath sharp. Ezra, what the hell was that? He didn't answer. He stared at the envelope in his hand. The crayon sun was smudged where his thumb had pressed. Do you understand what you just did? She hissed. You've given them ammunition. Investors, rivals, they'll eat this alive. His chest rose and fell like a tide he couldn't calm. Vila, he said softly. She drew me a bridge. When the doors slid open, his phone buzzed like a wasp net. Calls from the board, from lawyers, from politicians. He ignored them all. Instead, he walked to the top floor window, the city's arteries glowing beneath, and reopened the letter. The child's spelling errors made him ache. I think you can fix broken things because you look like you listen to secret. Ezra thought about the boy in the fridge photo. Naomi mentioned the chip smile. Him, years ago, before the grind filed his edges into stone. His mother used to say his smile looked like it was missing a piece, but that it made him real. He remembered nights when she worked 2 jobs, her cough muffled behind a closed door. He remembered the winter they nearly lost his breath fogging inside the apartment. She told him then, don't count what we don't have, Ezzy. Count what we can still get. He had built a life counting every decimal, every fraction of market share, every victory that silenced doubt. Yet here was Naomi, an 8-year-old, measuring wealth in magnets shaped like stars and drawings of bridges. He pressed the letter against his chest, a fervent prayer. The following morning, headlines screamed. Wall Street shaken by Cole's emotional collapse. Secret letter exposes vulnerability. Is Cole fit to lead? Ezra's team circled like hawks. Vila laid out a strategy. Release a statement. Deny nothing. Redirect everything. Say it was a publicity stunt. A metaphor for corporate responsibility. Spin it before it spins you. Ezra shook his head. It wasn't a stunt. His voice carried a strange calm, like a man who had already crossed some invisible threshold. Vila slammed her notebook shut. Then find that girl, Ezra. Before the press does, he tried. Calls to building contractors, night shift supervisors, custodial rosters. The name Naomi surfaced on no payroll. Her mother, invisible in a system designed to erase those who cleaned, but did not belong to Crayon. Ezra found himself sitting on the floor of his penthouse, the envelope beside him, as though it were the only anchor left. He whispered into the empty room, "Where are you, Naomi?" A memory surfaced uninvited. His mother's last night. She had pressed his hand, skin paper thin, eyes still blazing. "Don't forget the bridge, Ezzy," she murmured. He hadn't understood that. But now holding Naomi's bridge, he wondered if his mother had somehow sent this child's voice across the years to remind him what he had traded for steel and glass. At dawn, Ezra returned to the podium, unshaven, eyes shadowed. The world expected him to explain, to retract, to own up. Instead, he held up the envelope once more. "Yesterday," he said, voice raw, "a child taught me more about responsibility than this empire ever did. I won't hide from her words. Until I find her, every question about quarterly earnings, about acquisition, about forecasts will be answered with this letter. Because if we can't answer Naomi, what are we building for?" The room gasped. He knew he was daring them to crucify him. And maybe that was the point. The boardroom lights were merciless, gleaming off the polished mahogany like judgment. Ezra Cole sat at the head of the table, shoulders squared, the letter folded neatly in his breast pocket like contraband. Round him, the 12 directors studied him as if he were a stock graph dipped in red. "Ezra," began Harrington, the oldest of them, voice brittle with disdain, "you've undone 30 years of carefully engineered perception. You let a child dismantle your authority in front of the world." Ezra's eyes swept the room. He saw men who had profited from his armor, who loved his ruthlessness, his ability to turn empathy into leverage. They didn't want the boy who once drew crowns in a tattered notebook. They wanted the billionaire who turned competitors into ruin. He had spent decades building that mask. Every negotiation, every acquisition, every public appearance, he wore it like irons. Behind it, he buried hunger, fear, longing. Behind it, he buried Ezra, the son of a woman who died with a cough in her chest. "Authority," Ezra said finally, his voice quiet but dead. "If a piece of paper can dismantle it, perhaps what we built was never as strong as you believe." Murmurs broke out, indignant. Lila, seated near him, touched her temple, exasperated. Harrington slammed a palm down. "You risk billions on sentiment." "On sentiment, Ezra." The word cracked through the room like an insult. Ezra leaned forward, fingers steepled. Once, a boy promised his mother he would never forget the weight of her laughter. That boy grew into a man who forgot everything except numbers. Yesterday, a child reminded him. The board bristled. To them, it sounded like weakness. To Ezra, it felt like confession. The billionaire mask he'd worn for decades was slipping, and once it slipped, he couldn't force it back on. Not entirely. He felt lighter, yet terrified. Masks don't just hide, sometimes they hold a man together. What would remain if his shattered? Later, alone in his office, Ezra walked past the glass walls that looked over the city like watchtowers. He remembered the first time he entered this building as its owner, not as a janitor's son. Cameras had followed him then too, flashes applauding his ascension. He remembered adjusting his tie, practicing a smile that said untouchable. The boy who carried a chipped grin had been locked away. His mother's voice had been drowned under applause and quarterly reports. He sat at his desk, pulled out Naomi's letter, and laid it flat. His hand hovered over the words. "You looked like you listened to secrets. How could she have known?" Or maybe children always knew, in ways adults forgot. The billionaire mask told the world he was granite. But granite cracks, and when it does, it doesn't bend, it shatters. The phone rang. It was his lawyer, panicked. "Ezra, this is reckless. Investors are fleeing. The markets are questioning your stability. Do you realize what this does to your credibility?" Ezra stared at the skyline. Credibility with whom? Men who measure breadth by stock prices, or children who draw bridges so their mothers might live. His lawyer sputtered, then fell silent. Ezra ended the call. He felt a strange peace in the chaos, like finally breathing after years of holding his breath. That night, Ezra dreamt of his mother. She stood in their old apartment kitchen, steam rising from a pot of soup that barely fed them. She smiled at him, her chipped tooth boy, and whispered, "Don't let them make you believe stone is stronger than flesh." He woke with tears drying on his cheek, his chest aching with something he hadn't allowed in decades. The next morning, he walked through the lobby of his skyscraper without entourage. Employees froze, staring. Ezra usually moved like a storm, fast, loud, decisive. But today, he stopped. He looked at the janitor sweeping the marble floor, a woman with tired hands and eyes that avoided his. He bent down, picked up the stray scrap of paper she had been sweeping, and handed it to her with a small nod. "Thank you," he said. Her eyes widened, stunned. Nobody remembered the last time Ezra Cole said thank you to a stranger. The billionaire mask was cracking publicly now. Every move analyzed, every gesture magnified. But instead of fear, he felt something else rising in him, dangerous, liberating, truth. He could not go back. Naomi's letter had stripped him, left him raw before the world. And though the board wanted the mask restored, Ezra knew the boy with the chipped smile had finally clawed his way back to the surface. Still, a gnawing question tormented him. Why did Naomi's mother keep a photo of him? And why had Naomi written as if she knew him before the world crowned him billionaire? The bridge she drew was no accident. It was an invitation, perhaps even a revelation. Ezra pressed the letter to his chest once more. "I hear you, Naomi," he whispered into the empty room. "I hear you, and I will find you." The letter haunted Ezra in the hours between night and dawn. When the city exhaled and even skyscrapers seemed to sleep, he lay awake in his penthouse, walls of glass reflecting his shadow back at him. Naomi's crooked letters replayed in his mind, her bridge of crayons stretching across an unseen river. Each word pressed against a memory he had long tried to bury. The sound of his mother coughing through thin plaster walls, the smell of bleach on her clothes when she came home from night shifts, the way her hands shook as she counted coins to buy him paper and pencil. He closed his eyes. Suddenly, he was 8 again, feet swinging from a kitchen chair, sketching suns with too many rays while his mother hummed hymns to distract him from his hunger. The refrigerator rattled like it might collapse, but she pinned his drawings on it anyway, using chipped magnets shaped like stars. "Ezzy," she said, kissing the top of his head, "never stop building bridges. Even if they're only on paper." The phrase returned to him now with unbearable weight. Naomi's words were his mother's words, echoing across time. By morning, he couldn't sit still. He pulled on a hoodie far into his usual tailored armor and slipped out before his driver could react. He wandered the blocks where he grew up, places his empire now bulldozed and repaid. The corner store was gone, replaced by a glass cafe serving lattes at a price his mother would have called it. The old church basement, where she ladled soup to the homeless, had been turned into co-working offices. Ezra stood outside, heart heavy. He could almost hear her voice in the air. "Don't let them steal your soul while they buy your silence." He sat on the church steps, ignoring the stares of passers-by who recognized him, phones already lifted. For the first time in decades, he didn't care about the headline. He wanted only to feel close to the boy he had abandoned. The chipped smile boy. Naomi had seen him, somehow seen through the mask the world worshipped. How? Why? His hands trembled as he unfolded the letter once more. The ink of her uneven strokes smeared slightly at the edge, like the paper had been handled often, maybe even cried over. A fragment gnawed at him. "She keeps a photo on the fridge of a boy with a chipped smile. She says he is someone she once loved. I think he is you, his mind real." Could Naomi's mother have known him? Could she have been from his past? Someone who remembered Ezra before the world polished him into a brand. The possibility rooted in his chest like both poison and cure. He realized with a pang that Naomi's mother might be someone his ambition had left behind. Back in his office, the board demanded answers, analysts demanded numbers, the media demanded explanation. Ezra gave none. Instead, he locked the doors and opened a drawer he hadn't touched in 20 years. Inside was the green sketchbook, its spine cracked, pages filled with a child's bridges, crowns, and crooked sun. He traced the faded pencil lines, and tears blurred the images. He remembered the day he promised his mother, "I'll build a bridge so I will never drown." He had kept that promise in a way, but his bridge was steel and greed, not love. Leela barged in, frustration sharp. "Ezra, enough nostalgia. The world is circling. Investors want assurance. Rivals want your head. This," she gestured at the sketchbook, "is not strategy." Ezra looked up, eyes raw. "It's the only strategy that matters now." Leela froze. She had worked for him long enough to know when his tone was not to be moved. For the first time, she saw not the CEO, but the son, the boy still grieving, the man unraveling under a child's. That evening, Ezra walked through the city without security. He stopped at a modest apartment complex near the river, the kind of place Naomi had described. Wind rattled the building like a living thing. He stood outside, staring up at the cracked windows, half expecting a girl's voice to call his name. Instead, only silence. But he felt it in his bones. She was near. He whispered into the night, "I'm coming, Naomi. I'll cross that bridge, no matter what waits on the other side." Inside him, the echoes of childhood grew louder. His mother's cough, her laughter despite it, the chipped-toothed boy smiling in faded photograph, and Naomi's voice, binding past to present, reminding him that flesh is stronger than stone, that a bridge drawn in crayon could still hold the weight of a man who had forgotten how to walk across. Ezra turned from the building with resolve settling into his veins. The billionaire mask was gone now, cracked beyond repair. In its place rose something far more dangerous. Ezra Cole, the boy who had once believed in love strong enough to outlast hunger. And now, with Naomi's letter in his hand, he was ready to remember. The morning Ezra returned from the riverfront, the city had already transformed his tears into a commodity. Headlines screamed across digital billboard. "Billionaire breaks map. Who is Naomi, the girl who shook an empire?" Clips of his trembling voice reading the letter went viral overnight, dissected frame by frame. Some praised his vulnerability, others mocked it as staged. Markets dipped, then whiplashed upward as speculation churned. Ezra Cole had become the story, and Naomi, the faceless, voiceless child, was the ghost haunting every newsroom. He sat in his office, blinds drawn, the green sketchbook beside Naomi's envelope. Phones rang like alarm. His staff darted in and out with crisis memos, but Ezra remained fixed, eyes locked on the bridge she had drawn. Leela finally burst in, exhausted and furious. "You're trending in 50 countries, she said, dropping a tablet on his desk. He glanced at the screen. Hashtags multiplied. Hashtag letter to Cole. Hashtag an AOM's bridge. Hashtag crying CEO. Millions were demanding to know who Naomi was, if she even existed. Ezra pressed his palm to the paper as though to shield her. "She's real," he murmured. Leela folded her arm. "Then find her now. Because if you don't, the world will. And they won't be kind." She was right. Reporters had already swarmed every janitorial contractor in the city, chasing whispers of a sick mother and a child with crayon. Naomi's anonymity was crumbling under the weight of public obsession. Ezra clenched his fist. He had opened a door, but he hadn't prepared for the stampede that followed. That night, television anchors debated his sincerity. Was it a ploy to distract from financial missteps? One scoffed. Another countered. Or is this the first real crack in the culture of corporate coldness? Social media split into armies. Men painted him with cartoon tears. Others praised him as a prophet of compassion. But what seared Ezra most were the letters flooding his inbox, thousands from children, parents, janitors, stories of illnesses ignored, wages stolen, dreams deferred. Naomi's letter had been the spark, now a wildfire roared. Ezra read them all, each one a blade. "My mom works 3 jobs and still can't buy medicine. My dad died because insurance called his cancer pre-existing. I draw too, Mr. Cole. Can you fix broken things for us too?" He had built skyscrapers to stand above the world. Now the world's pain was delivered to his door in pixel and ink, demanding he step down and kneel. The board convened in emergency session. Harrington's voice cut like acid. This circus must end. Issue a denial. Say the letter was fabricated, an allegory. Salvage what's left of your reputation. Ezra looked at him across the table. You think salvation is found in denial? Harrington sneered. It's found in control. Vulnerability is contagion. And you've infected this company. Ezra stood slowly. Then let it spread. Gasps filled the room. For the first time, he didn't care if they asked it. He had crossed Naomi's bridge already. There was no retreat. Reporters camped outside his building. Drones hovered near his windows. When he slipped out, hoodie pulled low. Strangers shouted both curses and blessing. Some begged him to read their letters too. Others accused him of performance, of manipulation. Ezra walked through them like a man carrying both cross and crown, determined not to let their noise drown Naomi's small, steady voice in his head. One evening, as he scanned a sea of letters, he paused on a photo tucked inside an envelope from a stranger. A girl with braid, standing in front of a cracked apartment wall, holding up a drawing of a bridge almost identical to Naomi. But this one bore a caption scrawled in red marker. We are all waiting for you. His chest constricted. Naomi's bridge was no longer hers alone, it had become a symbol. The world was watching to see if he would cross it or burn it. Leela entered quietly, placing a hand on his shoulder. For once, there was no reprimand in her eye, only fatigue and something softer. You can't save them all, Ezra, she said gently. He closed his eyes. No, he whispered. But I can't ignore them anymore either. That's what I did my whole life. That's what killed her. His voice cracked on the last word her and Leela realized he wasn't just speaking of Naomi's mother. He was speaking of his own. Meanwhile, Naomi remained hidden. No journalist had found her. No photograph surfaced. She was both everywhere and nowhere, a myth threading through every conversation. Ezra clutched her original letter each night, desperate to locate the one voice that mattered among millions. Somewhere in the cacophony, the real Naomi was waiting. And he feared time was running out. Her mother's illness shadowed every word she had written. On the 15th day, Ezra stood at the podium again. Cameras bristled, pens poised, the world expectant. He held Naomi's envelope high. I won't answer your market questions today, he declared. Instead, I'll answer hers. She asked if I listen to secrets. I do. And now I ask all of you, will you? He placed the letter gently on the lectern. Because this is bigger than Naomi. It's every child asking why their parents' breath costs more than their life. It's every worker cleaning offices they can't afford to enter. And I will not build another tower until I build an ant. The room erupted shouts, applause. Ezra felt his mother's voice in the roar, faint but steady. Don't let them steal your soul. And for the first time, he wasn't sure if he was leading a company anymore or a movement. He began at midnight, because that was when Naomi said the building smelled like lemon. Ezra stepped through the loading dock in a grey hoodie and scuffed sneakers, a billionaire camouflaged as a shadow. The night supervisor blinked twice, then swallowed, as if he'd seen a ghost who could sign his paycheck. Ezra raised both hands gently. I'm not here to fire anyone. I'm looking for a girl named Naomi. Her mother cleans here. The supervisor glanced at the cameras. Ezra nodded toward the dark lane. Turn that one off 5 minutes. Please. They walked the fluorescent hall past stacked boxes of cleaning fluid. The air burned citrus and bleach. Ezra listened to the radio hiss on a cart, the wheels squeaking every third turn. A woman in a blue uniform pushed him up across marble, humming a hymn he knew from his mother's Sundays. Do you know a Naomi? Ezra asked. She stiffened, then softened at his face, tired, unshaven, stripped of broadcast polish. Plenty of Naomis in this city, she answered, guarding and kind at once. But only one true Bridges in the break room. She opened a locker. Inside, a taped crayon arc over a blue river. His chest flared hot. Beneath it, a post-it. From Oma, from Mr. Cole if he finds us. He snapped a photo, hands shaking. Do you know where her mother is? The woman's eyes clouded. People like us move when rents rise and bosses change contracts. We're fog. We disappear easy. She squeezed his sleeve before he could drift into despair. But Fogg remembers where the river runs. Try us tea. Bridget's pantry by the pier. Naomi liked the peanut butter packet. She always saved one for her mom. His tea. Bridget smelled like coffee and wet coats. The volunteer logbook was smudged with fingerprints and soup. Ezra flipped pages until he saw it. The looping child hand again doodled along the margin. A bridge. His son. 3-star. Naomi had written only in. The date circle matched the week before his press conference. He traced the circle with his thumb, as if he could warm it back into life. We don't give out addresses, the deacon murmured, recognizing him with a start. Ezra reached into his pocket, then stopped. Money had always been his master key. Tonight it felt like a lock. He pressed his palm over his heart instead. Someone's breath is running out. If rules are a river, build me a legal bridge. The deacon studied him, then slid over a flyer. Families from the pantry use Riverside Community Clinic. They're careful with names, but they sometimes pin kids' drawings by the door. He went at dawn. The clinic wore its exhaustion like a halo. Plastic chairs, coughing in minor key. A bulletin board blooming with crayon sky. Ezra scanned the paper garden until he saw it. Naomi's bridge, unmistakable, arsing over storm clouds. A strip of tape had lost its stick. He pressed it back, a silly, tender gesture that steadied him. The receptionist, young and iron-jawed, followed his touch. That one came in with a mom who wouldn't sit, she said. Kept pacing like the floor was a ship. Girl called her mama in a way that made the word carry the whole room. Do you know their last name? He asked. Privacy law, she replied, but not unkindly. And before you try money, don't. We don't take bribes here. We take blood pressure and prayers. Ezra exhaled. Then take this, he said, handing over a card. It's the number that answers on first ring. If Naomi or her mom come back, tell them Ezra is building that bridge. The receptionist tucked it away. Her eyes softened now. Murdoch Cole, she said. I'm not into billionaires, but I'm into mothers breathing. If they come, you'll know. He slept in backseat, in private lounges, in the hush of carpeted corridors between meetings he refused to lead. Leela trailed him like worry in heels. You're disappearing into a scavenger hunt, she snapped one afternoon, shoving takeout into his hand. He peeled the lid back. The steam smelled like the soups of a church basement. He almost smiled. I've been disappearing for you, he said. I'm practicing reappearing in the right place. She sighed, then sat beside him on the marble steps of his own lobby, both of them eating silently like teenagers who'd cut class. I liked you better before, she muttered. You were easier to lie for. He glanced over, grateful for the gallows humor. I liked me better before money learned my middle name. At dusk he walked to Naomi's likely spot. The guard at the gate wore a heavy uniform and a weary kindness. We're closed, he said. Ezra nodded toward the art taped to the hallway windows. I'm looking for a bridge. The guard frowned, then shrugged. Aren't we all? He let Ezra step inside for a minute that stretched into more. The hallway smelled of pencil shavings and last bell. On the bulletin board, a cluster of bridges drawn by small hands. One was Naomi's bold strokes, a river-like storm glass, 3 stars overhead. A sticky note, this time from a teacher. Letters are bridges when the river is too wide. Ezra's throat tightened. The phrase that had cut him on live television had a source. This classroom, this tender pedagogy that taught 8-year-olds the architecture of hope. He found the name, Ms. Davenport, room to be. He knocked. Inside, a woman was grading papers in the soft light of a desk lamp, a cardigan draped over a chair like a tired shoulder. She looked up, startled at the world's most famous Robin. I'm not here for cameras, he said quickly. I'm here for a child who draws bridges, Ms. Davenport folded her hand, wary. I can't give you students' information, she said. And if you're here to make a documentary out of my kid, you can leave the same way you came. Ezra shook his head. No documentaries. No PR. I'm trying to help a mother breathe. The teacher studied his face the way only teachers can, with X-ray tenderness and suspicion. Finally, she pointed at a paper on her desk. Naomi drew this during silent reading. She's steady when she draws. The kind of steady children use when holding back a flood, Miss. Davenport slid the drawing over. On the bridge's left end, a small stick figure stood with a crown tilted. On the right, a taller figure with a heart drawn outside her chest. Between them, in the middle of the span, the word soon. He pressed the paper like a relic. Do you know where soon is, Miss? Davenport's eyes flicked toward the window, toward the river. She mentioned a building that breathes, she said softly. Old, by the water. Hallway paint that peels like sunburn. Stairs that grow names. Ezra nodded. He knew it. He had stood outside it once already, feeling foolish, then faithful. He thanked the teacher and began to leave. Mr. Cole, she called after him. He turned. Howell that can't kneel has no right to stand, she said. Don't make me teach my kids that the bridge was a trick. Night fell fast by the river. The building exhaled as if it dreamed. Ezra climbed the stairs, counting them like rosary beads. Second floor, third, fourth at each landing. His star sticker clung to the rail. Gold, then blue, then red. His pulse quickened. On the fifth floor corridor, a door wore a crayon sun taped above the peephole, edges curling. The same yellow Naomi smeared on his envelope. The hallway smelled of fried onions and laundry steam. Somewhere a radio murmured a hymn in Spanish, clinging to hope like a refrain. He raised his hand to knock. Stopped. Through the thin wood, a cough shook the air, the kind that empties lung, then tries again. Then a girl's voice, small and fierce. Mama, drink water. I drew the bridge thicker today. His eyes stung. He lowered his forehead to the door, a man praying in a faith he had forgotten. On the wall across from him, a nail held nothing, a bare place where a frame might hang. He imagined a photo of a boy with a chit smile filling that absence, and for a suspended heartbeat he felt the past step into the hall. His knuckles touched the wood. He listened to the river in the pipes, to the breathing building, to the child promising thickness against the flood. Naomi, he whispered, so quietly only the door learned his secret. Then he knocked. Once, twice. A chain slid. Silence balanced on the hinge. The chain rattled, hesitated, then fell back into place. The door opened only a crack, revealing one brown eye framed by exhaustion. A girl's voice chirped before the woman could speak. Mama, who is it? Ezra dropped his hood. The whole light caught his face, the one plastered on magazines and stock tickers, now raw and trembling. The woman's gasp was a wound reopening. Ezra, she whispered, the name more memory than recognition. Her hand clutched the frame as if to steady herself against a ghost. Ezra's throat dried. He knew that voice, not from boardrooms or interviews, but from a time before years lost to hunger and youth. He saw it now, a fragment of laughter on a cold stairwell. A girl with paint-stained jeans sketching beside him when he was 17, both of them promising to become more than their poverty. Wheeler, he said, the name carrying both relief and regret. Naomi darted to the crack, eyes wide, her braids bouncing. Mama, that's him. That's the man from the TV, the one I wrote. Her excitement clashed against her mother's stillness. Wheeler pushed the door shut with a trembling hand. Ezra's palm pressed against it instinctively. Please, he said softly. Just let me see you. The lock clicked open again after a long silence. The door swung wide. The apartment was small, walls painted a tired beige, air heavy with the smell of menthol and boiled rice. A couch sagged beneath a patchwork blanket. Naomi clutched a sketchbook, watching him with awe and curiosity. Leela stood between them, arms crossed, her frame thinner than memory. The cough came then deep, tearing, leaving her breathless. Ezra stepped forward, instinctively reaching, but she raised a hand to stop him. Don't, she rasped. You don't get to play savior now. His chest caved at her words. I didn't know, he began. Leela laughed bitterly. You didn't want to know. You were too busy becoming untouchable. Ezra's gaze dropped to Naomi, who traced a crayon bridge across her sketchbook. oblivious to the adult battlefield. "She wrote me," he whispered. "She saved me." Leela's eyes softened briefly, then steeled again. "She doesn't know who you are to me, and I don't want her to." Ezra blinked. "She drew my smile on your fridge. She already knows." Naomi looked up, puzzled. "Mama, what's he mean?" Leela knelt quickly, brushing her daughter's. "Nothing, baby. Just grown-up talk." But Ezra saw it now, the chipped-tooth grin of his teenage self taped to the refrigerator, still held by magnets shaped like stars. A photograph, he thought, lost forever. His heart fractured. "Why would you keep that?" he asked. Leela's eyes flickered with old flame. "Because once, you swore you'd build bridges. Then you built walls instead. I kept it to remind myself of both the promise and the betrayal." Naomi interrupted, holding up her sketchbook. "Look, Mr. Cole, I made the bridge stronger today, so you can both cross. See? I even drew Mama laughing." Her innocence pierced the tension like sunlight through a storm cloud. Ezra knelt, trembling, to study a drawing, to stick figures, one crown, one with a heart drawn outside her chest, met in the middle of the bridge. Above them, 3 stars glowed. He swallowed hard. "It's beautiful," he whispered, fighting tears. Leela turned away, coughing again, gripping the counter for balance. Ezra rose. "She needs treatment. Real treatment. Let me." She spun back, fire in her eyes. "Don't you dare throw money at this like it erases 20 years. You can't buy back time." Ezra. Her words cut deep. He lowered his gaze. "No. But maybe I can stop the clock from stealing more." The silence that followed held years of unsaid things, letters never written, apologies never given, choices never undone. Naomi broke it, tugging Ezra's sleeve. "Will you walk across my bridge, Mr. Cole? Mama says bridges are only real if people cross." His voice cracked. "Yes, Naomi. I'll cross." Leela's eyes shimmered despite her anger. She whispered, "Be careful. Once you cross, there's no turning back." Ezra met her gaze. "That's the point." In that small apartment by the breathing river, 3 lives tangled into one truth. The girl with crayons had not only built a bridge, she had uncovered a past Ezra thought buried, a love he thought lost, and a daughter he didn't know. The city glittered beneath him, but Ezra Cole felt no pride staring out from his penthouse window. That the skyline was supposed to be his monument, proof that the chip smile boy had conquered the world. Yet all he saw was Naomi's crayon bridge, and Leela's eyes haunted, guarded, but alive. He pressed his forehead to the glass, whispering the word he hadn't dared shape aloud in decades. "Daughter." The revelation rolled through him like thunder. Naomi wasn't just a girl with crayons, she was his blood, his promise returned in flesh. He tried to imagine Leah's loss, her first steps, her first laugh, her first drawing taped to that fridge. All stolen, not by chance, but by his own absence. The billionaire had built towers high enough to scrape the sky, but had failed to build the one bridge that, when morning came, he arrived at headquarters in the same clothes, eyes swollen but unashamed. The boardroom erupted as soon as he entered. Harrington slammed his fist. "You've gone rogue. You vanish into ghettos. You humiliate this company with theatric, and now you refuse to sign the acquisition. Investors are fleeing." Ezra's voice cut through like low thunder. "Then let them flee." Gasps rattled the room. "You would sacrifice billions for what? A child's doodles?" Harrington spat. Ezra leaned forward, both palms on the table. "For a child who is mine." The confession sucked the air from the room. Leela froze mid-breath. Harrington's sneer collapsed into shock. Ezra continued, voice steady. "Naomi is my daughter. And her mother Lily is someone I once loved before you taught me love was weakness. I won't abandon them again." The room erupted in chaos. Some shouted about scandal, paternity suits, tabloid. Others murmured about opportunity rebranding. Humanity is a commodity. Ezra saw their greed twisting even this revelation into leverage. His stomach turned. He slammed a fist down. "This isn't branding. This is blood." His voice cracked, and the silence afterward was absolute. Later, in his office, Leela entered carefully. "Is it true?" she asked. Ezra nodded. She sat across from him, eyes softer than he had ever seen. Then the world will tear her apart, Ezra. They'll hunt her, dissect her. Are you ready for that? He rubbed his temples. I don't want the world to know. I just want her safe. Leela exhaled. Then you need to decide which mask you'll keep, CEO or father. You can't wear both. That night, Ezra returned to Leela's apartment. Naomi ran into his arms as if she'd always known, her crayon-stained fingers clutching his hoodie. You came back, she said simply. His chest ached. I will always come back. Leela stood in the kitchen, watching silently. When Naomi drifted off to sleep on the couch, sketchbook still open, Leela finally spoke. Why now, Ezra? Why after all these years? He swallowed. Because she wrote me a letter I couldn't ignore. Because your eyes still hold the truth I've been running from. Because without you, I am nothing but steel and glass. Tears filled her eyes, but her voice was. You think words heal 20 years? I raised her alone. I worked nights so she could draw suns instead of shivering. Where were you? Ezra dropped to his knees before her, something he had never done for a boardrooms or king. Buried under mask, drowning in greed. I don't ask forgiveness, I ask for a chance to stand where I should have stood from the beginning. Leela's cough answered first, ragged and cruel. She steadied herself against the counter. Ezra reached out, but she waved him off. You can't fix everything with money. He's your titan. No. But medicine, treatment that I can do. Let me fight for you. For her. She turned away, shoulders trembling. If you cross this bridge, Ezra, you can't go back to your empire unchained. They'll crucify you. He stood, resolute. Then let them. I would rather be crucified as a father than crowned as a fraud. For the first time in years, her expression softened. She whispered, Naomi will need you if I don't make it. His breath caught. Don't say that. But she only looked at him, eyes full of the truth no money could erase. That night, as Naomi slept with her sketchbook on her chest, Ezra sat beside her, watching her small breath. He touched the edge of her crayon bridge, tracing the word she had scrawled at its center, soon. He whispered to the darkness, I'm here now. I'll be both the man in the crown and the man with the heart outside his chest. I'll burn the empire if I have to. Outside, the river churned, the building breathed, and the mask of the CEO cracked beyond rope. In its place stood a father, trembling but unbroken, ready to fight both the boardroom and fate itself for the daughter who had brought him to his knees. The news broke before dawn. Someone on the board had leaked it. Ezra Cole has a secret daughter. Tabloids splashed Naomi's crayon bridge across their covers, dissecting every star, every crooked line. Some outlets called her the heiress of the tears. Others labeled Little Gold Digger, dragging her photo from the shadows of old high school yearbooks. Ezra woke to a storm of flashing lights outside his penthouse. Cameras barked his name like wolves. His phone flooded with messages, panic, outrage, opportunism. Harrington called first. Ezra answered, jaw locked. You've destroyed us, Harrington hissed. The shareholders demand your resignation. If you don't step down, we'll vote you out by week's end. Ezra's voice was iron. Do it, then. But know this, I will burn the floor you stand on before you bury my daughter beneath it. Harrington laughed cruelly. You think love is leverage? You've turned vulnerability into your noose. Watch as we tighten it. By noon, the board convened in an emergency session broadcast live to investors. Ezra entered the chamber not in a tailored suit, but in a simple shirt, sleeves rolled, the letter folded neatly in his hand. Gasps rippled. Harrington opened with venom. Ezra Cole is compromised. He's allowed sentiment to dictate strategy. He's funneled company resources into chasing a janitor's child. He is unfit to lead. The room buzzed with applause from those eager for his downfall. Ezra stood slowly, letting the silence strike. He placed Naomi's letter on the table between them. Yes, he said, voice steady. I'm compromised. Compromised by the truth that our empire pays billions for marble lobbies while the people who clean them cough their lungs raw. Compromised by a child who reminded me that bridges matter more than towers. If that makes me unfit to lead your empire of silence, so be it. Harrington slammed his fist. You're a fool. Investors don't care about bridges, they care about dividends. Ezra leaned forward, eyes blazing. And what is a dividend to a dying mother's breath? What is profit if it buries our humanity? You call me a fool. Then I would rather be a fool with a daughter who believes in me than a king ruling a kingdom of rot. The board roared. Some called for immediate vote. Others shouted objection. Leela stood suddenly, surprising them all. I've worked under Ezra Cole for 15 years. I've seen him ruthless, relentless, impossible. But I've never seen him honest until now. And if honesty is disqualification, then maybe this company deserves to collapse. Her words cracked the room in half. Ezra glanced at her, gratitude burning in his chest. But Harrington was not finished. He slid a dossier across the table, photos spilling like poison. Ezra at Leela's door, Naomi clutching his hoodie, the Crayon bridge taped above their peephole. You've endangered them, Harrington sneered. Because of you, the girl is hunted by cameras, the mother harassed by tabloids. You've dragged them into the fire. Some protector you are. Ezra's stomach twisted. He saw Naomi's small hands drawing suns while strangers snapped photos outside her window. Leela's cough echoed in his bone. Harrington's words stabbed deep, because they carried truth his love had exposed them. But Ezra straightened, chest rising. If I exposed them, then I will shield them. If I endangered them, then I will defend them. Not with lawyers, not with PR, with my name, my my very body if I must. The room erupted again. Outside, the press devoured every leaked word. Hashtags exploded. Hashtag father or fraud. Hashtag bridge or tower. The world was watching, not just for earning, but for blood. Ezra knew he had ignited a war he might not survive. Yet as he walked out of the boardroom, cameras swarming, he felt clarity sharper than any quarterly report. On the steps, microphones lunged. Mr. Cole, are you confirming Naomi is your daughter? Ezra paused, then lifted the letter high. I'm confirming that she is my bridge, and I will cross it, no matter the cost. Flashes erupted, questions screamed, the crowds. Somewhere in the noise, he imagined Naomi's voice whispering, you looked like you listened to secret. Back at the apartment, the storm had reached them. Leela opened the door with eyes full of fury. They're camped outside, Ezra. Naomi can't even sleep without flashes through the window. Do you see what you've done? Her cough broke her anger for a moment, but her gaze cut sharper than any boardroom insult. Naomi peeked from behind her, clutching her sketchbook. Mama, it's okay, she said softly. Cole will fix it. He promised. Ezra dropped to his knees before her, shame and resolve colliding. Yes, Naomi, I promised. And tomorrow, I fight not just for you, but for every child whose letter the world ignored. Leela's silence was heavy. Finally, she whispered, if you mean that, Ezra, then don't fight as a CEO. Fight as her father. Ezra bowed his head. For once, the crown slipped willingly. Naomi sat cross-legged on the couch, sketchbook open, crayons scattered like jewels. Outside the window, flashes popped and voices rose, reporters shouting, neighbors gawking, the city buzzing about her letter. But Naomi tuned it up the way children learn to tune out thunder, by drawing something brighter. She pressed the purple crayon hard until it snapped. Mama, she said softly, are they mad at me? Leela's cough rumbled before her. She sat beside Naomi, smoothing her braids. No, baby, they're mad at the truth, and truth makes noise when people try to bury it. Naomi nodded, eyes wide. But Mr. Cole said he'll fix it. He read my letter out loud like a song. She smiled, remembering the video replay she'd secretly watched on her teacher's phone. Millions of people had seen her crooked words. Millions had cried. To her, that was magic, like shouting into the wind and hearing the whole world echo back. But Naomi's world was not magic, it was peeling paint and rent overdue. Coughs poured to thin, nights where the fridge hummed louder than her mother's breathing. She didn't understand insurance forms or boardroom wars, but she understood bridges. Bridges meant you could reach someone on the other side, even if the river was wide. That's why she drew them, over and over, thicker each time. One afternoon, She peeked through the blinds and saw Mr. Cole arguing with men in suits outside. He looked tall and scary to the others, but to Naomi, he looked like the boy in Mama's photo. His smile was chipped, his eyes tired, but when he saw her watching, he winked. Naomi giggled, ducking back. She whispered to her mother, "He looks like the king from my stories, but sadder. Maybe he needs a crown I draw." At school, Naomi was both hero and tough. Some kids whispered, "That's the girl who made the CEO cry." Others sneered, "Your mom's just a cleaner." You tricked him. Naomi clenched her sketchbook to her chest, fighting tears. Davenport knelt beside her, whispering, "Don't forget, Naomi, bridges are stronger when others walk with you." Naomi nodded and drew during recess instead of playing. She drew a bridge big enough for the whole class, even the ones who teased her, because she believed bridges should never leave anyone behind. At night, while her mother slept in cough-heavy dream, Naomi sat at the window watching the city light. She imagined Ezra in one of those towers, pacing, lonely, holding a letter. She whispered into the glass, "Don't be scared, Murdoch Cole. I'm not scared either. If you cross my bridge, we'll meet in the middle." She pressed a star sticker onto the window pane as a signal, hoping he would see it from his skyscraper. One evening, Ezra came to the apartment again, this time slipping past reporters like a shadow. Naomi greeted him with a crown cut from cardboard. "Here," she said, placing it crookedly on his head. "Now you don't look so sad." Ezra's laughter broke into a sob. He knelt, hugging her tightly. "Naomi," he whispered, "you've given me more than all the towers in this city." She beamed. "Then you better not break my bridge." But Naomi saw what her mother tried to hide. The cost that bent Lila double. The pill bottles empty too soon. The way her mother whispered at night, praying the walls wouldn't collapse before Naomi was grown. Naomi added thicker beams to her drawing, coloring until the paper tore. She told herself, if the bridge is strong enough, Mama can cross too. Maybe even forever. Yet children notice what adults bury. Naomi noticed how Mr. Cole's visits grew shorter, interrupted by urgent phone call. She noticed the lines in his forehead deepen each time he glanced at headlines flashing through his phone. She noticed her mother's worried glances, the tension in her jaw whenever Ezra spoke of money or medicine. "He's trying, Mama," Naomi whispered once. Lila kissed her forehead. "Sometimes trying comes too late." Naomi didn't understand all of it, but she understood enough to add one more figure to her drawing, a small girl in the middle of the bridge, holding hands with both the crowned man and the heart outside woman. Naomi's world was crayons and secret, love and sickness, stars and bridges. She didn't know about shareholder votes or hostile takeovers. She didn't care about headlines or hashtags. All she knew was that she had written a letter, and the letter had made the biggest man in the world cry, and somehow that made her believe bridges could hold even the heaviest truth. As she drifted to sleep that night, sketchbook still open, Naomi whispered to the darkness, "Tomorrow, my bridge will be ready. And if Mr. Cole crosses, he won't be alone." Ezra Cole had spent nights staring at Naomi's crayon bridge until the colors blurred, as though the paper itself breathed. Each time he looked at it, he felt less like a CEO and more like a father, a son, a man stripped bare. But the world outside would not wait for his transformation. Stock markets trembled, analysts screamed collapse, rivals circled like sharks. Harrington sharpened knives in boardrooms and headlines alike. One morning, Ezra stood before the mirror, tie dangling in his hand. He hadn't worn one in weeks, but today he knotted it deliberately, not as armor, but as offering. Today, he would decide empire or daughter. The reflection that stared back at him looked older than the man splashed on magazine covers, but it also looked free. He walked into the shareholder meeting, cameras humming like insects, journalists salivating. Harrington was already at the podium, lips curled in triumph. "Ezra Cole has compromised this company with personal scandal, reckless sentiment, and dangerous ideology," Harrington declared. "Today, we reclaim stability." Applause burst from half the room. Ezra stepped forward, Naomi's letter folded neatly in his breast pocket. He didn't bring charts or slides. He brought only his voice. For you, he began. I told myself I built bridges. But what I built were walls of glass that kept me above the people I swore to never forget. A child reminded me what real bridges look like. He held up her drawing, taped now onto a stiff board. Flashes lit the room. Gasps rippled. This company made billions ignoring the very people who clean our floors, cook our meals, carry our burden. That ends today. His tone sharpened. I am liquidating 20% of my personal holdings and transferring the funds to a foundation in Naomi's name dedicated to healthcare access for every contract worker who makes this empire possible. The room exploded. Outrage, shock, applause. Harrington nearly choked. You can't. You'll tank the market. Ezra's gaze cut him down. If the market cannot bear the weight of a mother's breath, then let it collapse. I will not. Shareholders screamed. Some cheered. Reporters shouted questions like daggers. But Ezra stood taller than he had in years. He wasn't speaking for stock prices, he was speaking for Naomi, for Leela, for the chip smile boy who once promised his mother he'd never let her have to die. When he left the stage, Leela followed, breathless. Ezra, you just set fire to your empire. He turned to her, eyes raw but steady. No. I just lit a torch to see the way forward. She shook her head, half in disbelief, half in admiration. You're insane. He almost smiled. No, I'm finally sane. That evening, he returned to Leela's apartment. The crowd outside had doubled, but he pushed through. Bodyguards fending off cameras. Naomi was waiting at the window, crown of cardboard still intact. She ran to him, arms wrapping tight. Did you cross, mister? Cole, she asked breathlessly. He knelt, eyes shining. Yes, Naomi, I crossed. And I'll never go back. Leela stood behind her, pale from another coughing spell. But her eyes held something new, fragile hope. You really did it, she whispered. Ezra nodded. It won't heal the past, but maybe it will heal what's ahead. Naomi pulled them both toward her sketchbook. Then we all meet in the middle, she declared, tapping her drawing where the three figures stood hand in hand. Ezra felt his throat close. For the first time, he believed it. He wasn't just crossing Naomi's bridge, he was building one with every step. One that could outlast ours, headlined even him. But redemption was never without cost. Outside, Harrington fed cameras a venomous smile. Ezra Cole has abandoned fiduciary duty. He's chosen personal drama over professional responsibility. Mark my words, this story isn't over. His words slithered into the night, promising war. Inside, Naomi curled between her mother and father for the first time. Sketchbook clutched her chest. Ezra kissed her forehead, whispering, Sleep, little bridge builder. Tomorrow will be louder, but tonight we are together, and for one sacred night, he allowed himself to believe love could be stronger than the storm gathering at his gates. The storm broke in ways Ezra Cole could never have scripted. Markets convulsed. Commentators predicted the collapse of his empire. Rivals salivated. Lawsuits piled like snowdrifts at his door. Yet in the street, something stranger happened. Workers marched with Naomi's bridge printed on cardboard signs. Nurses carried copies into hospital. Janitors taped it to cards. Teachers pinned it to bulletin boards. The Crayon bridge became more than Naomi's. It became a banner of defiance, a symbol that even the smallest voice could split the silence of power. Ezra watched from the window of Leela's apartment. Naomi asleep between them, her sketchbook open like scripture. He had given up his armor and discovered something heavier, but holier, responsibility. He no longer ruled an empire. He carried a cause, and somehow, it felt like breathing again. Leela's cough grew worse, though treatment had begun. Ezra sat beside her one night, his hand covering hers. I don't know if I can buy you more time, he admitted. She smiled faintly. You can't. Time isn't for sale. But you can fill what's left with bridges instead of towers. He swallowed hard. I wasted 20 years. She squeezed his hand, weak but firm. Then don't waste the next 20. When Naomi stood, Ezra tucked the blanket round her and whispered, I'll walk every bridge you draw, Naomi, even the ones that scare me. She blinked up at him, drowsy. Then I'll make them strong enough for all of us. She drifted back into dream, leaving him with a truth stronger than any courtly gain. Days later, Ezra stood again at a podium, not in a skyscraper, but in a community hall near the river, the air warm with bodies and hope. Reporters filled the back rows, skeptical but curious. Workers crowded the front, many wearing uniforms that smelled of bleach and labor. Naomi sat in the second row, crown of cardboard still crooked, holding her mother's hand. Ezra lifted Naomi's drawing high. "This is my legacy," he said simply. "Not towers of steel, not numbers on a ledger. A bridge drawn by a child who reminded me that power means nothing if it doesn't protect the most fragile among us." His voice cracked. "From this day forward, the Cole Foundation will dedicate its entire fortune to health care for workers and children like Naomi. And if that means I am no longer a billionaire, then I am finally free." The room erupted, half in applause, half in chaos. Cameras flashed, headlines formed in real time. Harrington stood in the corner, lips twisted with rage, but his voice was drowned beneath the swell of ordinary people chanting one word: bridge. 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 Ezra looked at Naomi, who grinned through missing teeth, waving her drawing like a flag. Later that evening, Ezra returned to the river with her. They stood on an actual bridge, city lights shimmering in the water below. Naomi leaned over the railing, eyes wide. "It looks just like my drawing," she whispered. Ezra smiled, resting a hand on her shoulder. "No," he said softly. "Yours is stronger. Yours held me when I was falling." Leela joined them, pale but steady, her core softened for now. She took Ezra's hand in hers. For the first time in decades, they stood side by side, their daughter between them, the skyline a backdrop instead of a throat. Ezra breathed deep, the night air cool against his face, and thought of his mother's last word. "Don't forget the bridge." He hadn't, not anymore. Naomi's letter had carried him across a river wider than wealth, deeper than time, and though storms would come, though towers might fall, the bridge remained, not drawn in crayon anymore, but carved into legacy. The world would remember Ezra Cole not for his empire, but for his tears, his choice, his daughter's hand tugging him toward the middle of a bridge. A bridge that belonged to everyone who dared believe the distance between despair and hope could be crossed. And in the hush that followed, Ezra whispered to Naomi, though the whole world might hear, "Thank you for saving me."